Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Michi Makes Up. Byredo has released another new eyeshadow palette. It's called State of Emotions. And we're going to do swatches, I'll demo it, and then at the end I'll do some comparisons with Byredo eyeshadow palettes released last year. Not that the color stories are similar at all, in fact they're totally different, but there's actually a new, was it image and makeup director or partner at Byredo, and it is Lucia Pica, who previously was at Chanel for 6 years. And Byredo's makeup director or artistic director prior to Lucia assuming the position of partner there was Ismaya French. I'm just curious to see creatively the difference that we might be able to notice from those palettes. So if you're interested, definitely stick around to the end. But first, let's get into State of Emotions. And she has released, Lucia Pica, under her direction. There was another eyeshadow palette that was released, I want to say 3 months ago at this point. It was a purple eyeshadow palette and looked beautiful. I didn't pick it up because I already have a lot of purple eyeshadow palettes. I felt like I could probably dupe those shades, most notably using Viseart's Violette Étendue palette. However, that's for another day, but let's just take a look at State of Emotions. And when we first saw the photos online, I think there was a lot of reaction that Lucia Pica is known for her red tone, red earth type tones, color stories when she was at Chanel. So we saw this and felt like, hey, this is very much her style. But I was pleasantly surprised because there's actually, while there are red undertones here and brown, this is actually much more pink and plum leaning than it is red. So why don't we look at the swatches? I'm going to first start from the side, moving over here. I really actually do enjoy this first shade. It is much more matte in textures than all the other shadows, but it has some gold specks and sparkles in it. I can see, some of it kind of flaked off here, but it is a soft, beautiful shade. And the gold specks that I just mentioned, it's pretty subtle, but you can definitely see it. I can definitely see it when I look at it like this. Next is the metallic gold shade. And this is a beautiful gold shade. It is on the warmer side. I think it is, this whole color story is a subtle nod to Lunar New Year just because of the timing and overall how it's red, pink, and is paired with a gold shade. Then we're gonna go into the center shade here, this burgundy. And this is also a metallic. And then for the final two shades, I feel like these colors might end up blending into each other really easily, but we'll see. So far, everything has swatched really beautifully. So let's get these on the lids. I'm going to start off with the shade and put it all over the lid. Next, taking the shade here, I'm placing that onto the outer corner. Taking the shade, I'm placing this from the inner corner to the center of the lid. Actually, I'm going to go in with a finger, and I think we're going to be able to get a better, hopefully better payoff. Taking the center shade here, I'm putting that on the lower lash line. Also going to do that on the upper lash line too. And then taking this gold shade here and placing that onto the inner corner. And I'm actually going to use this gold shade again and put that, or just tap it onto the center of the lid. I'm just curious how all 5 shades, when you combine them, how they play together to create the look. So this is the look on the right eye, and I was really deliberate. I really wanted to try all of the shades to see what potentially can come out of it. I do have some concerns just looking at how similar the tones are, how they might blend into each other and it just looks like a single shade. But when you layer the shadows and take advantage of the different textures they have, you can get a different look. And then now I'm going to move on to the left eye and create a different look without using all of the shades, because I think that more closely mimics what I do on a day-to-day and possibly for a lot of people too. So I'm going to probably pick 3 shades here, maybe even 2. We'll see how it goes, and we'll see what we can get out of that. I love how the shade looks in the swatches. So I'm going to go back in and put this onto the outer half of the lid. Then taking this gold shade here, I'm really going to pack it on. And we might have to go back using a finger. We'll start with a brush first. Then I'm going to go into this most outer shade here, and I'm going to place that onto the crease, just creating or using it to create a bit more dimension. And I'm going to soften up this a little bit more. I'm going to take SUQQU's Melting Powder Blush in Koimeguri number 3 and add that to the cheeks. Wow. Okay, I think we went a little bit too much on here. Let me wipe that off. Wow, I did not expect that. Well, since I have a bit more blush than I intended today, I'm going to go with a nude lip. I'm taking the new Chanel Rouge Allure Velvet Matte Lipstick. This is a new shade, not a new line for Chanel, but a new shade in number 60 in Temporelle. And if you're interested in taking a look at 6 of the new 14 shades from the Luminous Velvet Matte line, I do have a dedicated video that just went up, so check it out if you're interested. We had lots of fun kind of doing swatches and demoing these new shades. But this is the finished look, and I like how all the colors have gone together and paired together. My thoughts on this eyeshadow palette. So in terms of quality, I don't really have any issues with it. Some of the textures I'm seeing is actually very similar to the textures we saw in last year's palettes with these oysters or raindrop palettes. And so that is nothing new. But I do want to say regarding that, if you've tried those palettes and the textures frustrated you, because this shade here, I really got much more out of it using a finger than a brush, and I think that can be frustrating. Although when Ismaya French was like the makeup or creative makeup director at the company, she really emphasized makeup being a sensory experience, using fingers to apply. Of course you can also use brushes too, but she seemed to use her fingers a lot in demonstrations, and so I'm not gonna ding the palette for that, but it's something that I want you guys to be aware of. So if you don't want to use your fingers to apply any of the shadows, I think this is going to be kind of disappointing. And this matte shade here I actually do really like because it has the gold flecks in it. It's like a spin, so it's not just a flat matte that you can use to help you create a look. In fact, you can probably wear this alone and tap a bit of the gold on there for a nice look. However, I wish there was more tonal differences in the shade, or I wish this matte was maybe a different color altogether, or one of these being like just a different color altogether to complement this color story, to complement the gold, because these three here, if not for their good and differentiating textures of their finishes, they will blend in really quickly, really easily. You'll get different looks from this palette if you use or stick with maybe 2 shades at a time. Adding in a third one, like you can even see this look here, adding in a third one, it starts making your look be very similar. So I think there's definitely some limitations, not enough flexibility of this color story. It's beautiful, it's easy enough to use, but I think there is just not as much versatility. I'll take out some of the other Byredo palettes I have and try to further demonstrate why that is. And then for the rest of the shadows here, they're just very similar in tones. Again, it's just easy to have them start looking like one shade if you're not conscious about your placement, and also like playing up certain textures. And I attempted to create what I thought might have been 2 different looks, but they look very similar. They look quite similar. I wanted to go really bold on the gold here, used a lot of it. There's nothing wrong. I think they're beautiful. The colors are beautiful, but again, it's just hard to create different looks with it, with this color story here, because I think the tones are just too similar. And while the textures do contrast, there still is quite a bit left to be desired. Before I go and do some more comparisons, I will say though, this palette is a dupe of Pat McGrath's Lunar New Year palette, and this was when she did 6 pans in this style, and this was released for Lunar New Year. You can see the gold and the red, which is really synonymous with Lunar New Year. We see just a ton of gold and red. However, I will give her props that the color story is not dependent on red. I could make like a 15-minute video talking about, you know, just because it's Lunar New Year doesn't mean we have to have like all red shades, like red lipstick, red for every collection. There can be brown and pink and other things to just give it more variety. Anyways, this is a beautiful, beautiful palette. One of my favorite 6-pan palettes from Pat McGrath. These 3 shades here, I'm going to swatch it, but I feel like we're going to find their counterparts in this palette, in this State of Emotions. If I told you these 3 shades are from State of Emotions and I covered up these 2 here, I think that's believable. You would believe me. Very similar tone gold, slightly brighter, but very, very similar. This shade here, very similar to this one. Even this pink down here it's basically the same idea. I think this has more of a punch to it than this. This is softer in comparison, but very similar. This might be a little bit more sparkly than this, but I feel like this has that, it's a bit more of a, almost a bit more molten metallic than compared to this. This has a bit more sparkle to it. But anyways, they're basically the same. It's duped. This palette is discontinued. So if you happen to want this palette and can't find it, you could pick this up. But if I were to choose between the 2, this is the better palette because you get this burgundy shade here. You can do so much more just with the presence of this shade, because you can start mixing and making shades a bit deeper. You can make your look pop more, because if you just use these 3 or even this matte here, you get a very soft look, and this is kind of like your inner corner, your highlight. You pop it onto the center, but if you just ignore this one here and focus on these, you still get a very soft look that's similar to what I have here. But once you pop this in, it's a game changer. It changes things. So this is the superior palette, and there are 5 slots here. We could have taken away one of the paints, or again, change up the matte, make it a different shade, or change up the other metallics, anything to get something more, well, to basically get this palette. But you get the idea. There's just more versatility, more looks you can create. And because of all the reasons I've listed, I would say, unless you're particularly drawn to this color story or you've been looking for this palette, I think you can pass on this. Well, let's get into comparison. This palette released in 2021, Metal Boots in the Snow. I love this palette. Some people were frustrated by the textures. This shade here just doesn't have that same metallic butteriness that some of us enjoy. I mean, I like those shades too, but it because of that, actually, just let me swatch and show you. Because of just maybe the tackiness of it, it does require more patience to build it up, to put it on the lid. It helps, and there's no fallout as a result, but it helps the other shadows kind of stick on a little bit more. And then this glitter shade here, and some people are not going to like it, and I think understandably they see the glitter and they said, hey, I'm out, I'm not gonna deal with that. But it also helped it adhere better to the shadows because of, you know, this particular one. I just love this color story. Slate blue, this duochrome here, beautiful, and this like cool silvery shade. It's one of my favorites. I think you get something that is fun, experimental, but also wearable shades that are easy to identify with. And it's just all packed into this like 5 shadows of a luxury brand. How fun. This was released under Isabelle French's direction. And then the last Byredo palette I do want to show you, because I think this one is maybe most closely resembles in terms of like texture and the kind of makeup play you can get out of it, to State of Emotions. And this is Disco. It's a popular Byredo palette. These are all metallic shades. They're all very warm, except for this one here. This palette, it can also blend in if you're not being thoughtful about placement and the combination of the shades. However, you can still create a couple of different looks from this, because there's a much lighter shade here. You can play around on how you might want the light to hit your eye, like the emphasis of the shadow. So you can definitely play around here. If you completely skip the gold and play with the light shade, a deep shade, and one of these two, you can get something else entirely different. You can also put this all over your lid and then play with the gold here, or maybe just do these 2 shades plus this as a liner. So there's like way more variance, and then of course more versatility because of that. And I'll hold up Disco versus State of Emotions. From looking at the 2 side by side, it would seem like there's more contrast in this palette, State of Emotions, than Disco, but in practice, when you start applying the shadows, you get more looks, or the ability to create more looks with this palette. I hope that helped you guys decide on whether this palette is for you or not. And personally, there are a few things left to be desired here. I may make another video talking about Byredo's makeup, and I think the direction we're seeing it go towards or go into and how it's changed. That'll come at a later time when I get a chance to sit down and film some more. Thank you guys for watching. See you again in the next one. Take care. Bye.